Good evening and welcome to Solihull Radio. This is Team Talk on World Mental Health Day. My name is Alison Swift. I am the author of My Wellness Toolbox and I am joined by a great team of experts and practitioners this evening for us to talk all things tools relating to your mental health. So welcome everybody. Firstly, I'm going to hand over to Jeff, my partner in crime this evening.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us here on Solihull Radio. We really do appreciate you clicking in and listening in to what we've got to say. It is World Mental Health Day, of course, and using our power of social media, we have created a team of people in the Solihull Radio studio that will not only give you a different perspective, but maybe some different ideas or maybe some different ways of thinking about things if you are out there going through, as we all are, our own journey. Directly to the right of me, I have Mr. Olivier Keeley, and he is a personal trainer. He is a wellbeing, mental health, positive mental attitude and fitness coach. So he will be taking that sort of perspective on our roundtable this evening. Moving round, I just need to grab a piece of paper because there's so many different things I want to speak to you about this evening. It's really important. So Monarca da Silva. Now, Monarca comes from Relax Kids. So we'll find out a little bit more about this as the evening goes on. I'm just giving you a brief overview now. Next to Monarca, we have Kate Moxley, who does a lot of the well-being, early years, mental health, first aid, and the mates walks in Solihull Parks and things like that. And then we have Rob Bucknell, who is a holistic therapies sort of practitioner, and he's going to come at the conversation with that angle. And of course, you've already heard from Alison Swift, the author of My Wellness Toolbox. Hello. Now, we've got some music lined up for you today that may help. It may become part of your positive playlist, but of course we are going to go and move into discussions and things like that. Do you want to get in touch with us? If you want to get in touch with us now and be part of this wellbeing show, why don't you give us a call, 0121 704 4253. If you've got a story to tell, if you've got a tool that you use to help in your life now, why don't you give us a call and bring it to everyone else in Solihull, the surrounding area and the rest of the world. So it's 0121 704 4253. If you want to send us a text, start your text with the word studio and then message that to 82228. That will come straight through to our team here in the studio. And if you want to send us a little story that's a little bit too much for a text, why don't you give us an email, studio@solihullradio.com. Hopefully that introduction was all right for you.
Thank you, Jeff. That was very good.
Is that okay?
Brilliant. Thank you.
Go for it.
Yeah, so one of the power tools in my wellness toolbox is music. So we are going to have a positive playlist starting this evening. So as Jeff's already mentioned, you can text your positive songs in and we can try and play them, or we can try and build a positive playlist that you can download at a later date. So we're going to kick off with the first song on our positive playlist this evening. This is actually one of Jeff's favourites, and it's James Taylor, You've Got a Friend.
When you're down and troubled and you need a helping hand and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call up my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. Oh yeah, babe, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer or fall, now all you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got a friend. if the sky above you should turn dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind should begin to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud now. Soon I'll be knocking upon your door. You just call up my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running. Oh yes, I will see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, yeah. All you got to do is call, and I'll be there, yeah, yeah, yeah. Hey, ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold? They'll hurt you and desert you. Well, they'll take your soul if you let them. Oh yeah, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Oh baby, don't you know about winter, spring, summer, or fall? Hey, now all you've got to do is call. Lord, I'll be there, yes I will. No, you've got a friend. You've got a friend, yeah. Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Ain't it good to know you've got a friend? Oh yeah, yeah, you've got a friend.
Solihullradio.com.
That was James Taylor with You've Got a Friend, which I think is a really important message on such an important day that is World Mental Health Day. So, one of the things that we really want to get across in today's discussion is that we need to talk about our mental health, and it's really important to talk about it. And I think it's really important to start talking about it from a really early age, which is why I'm now going to hand over to Manaka to tell us a little bit more about what you do with Relax Kids.
Hi everyone. So my background is working with children from all walks of life, from all backgrounds. I've been doing that for about 15 years, mainly within child protection and child development. And through my work and becoming a mum myself, I started to realise more and more how hectic children's lives are from very, very early on. They're sort of engaged in so many different activities, after school clubs, tests, constant tests at school, having to perform in a certain way within the school environment. And that children didn't really have a place or the time to be able to unwind and release some of that tension that builds up through the day. Their concentration was sort of getting less and less with the children that I was working with, issues around sleeping, behavioural issues, and sort of children being diagnosed with certain illnesses, which not necessarily, I personally don't feel are specific illnesses. It's more to do with the stresses that they're experiencing day to day, manifesting in their behaviour as their days go on. having sort of experienced that, I decided I wanted to work with children in a different way, to support them in developing life skills, really, around how to manage their emotional well-being and being able to regulate emotions, which is what Relax Kids is all about. Relax Kids uses a 7-step programme where you take children from a really high energy state right down to a very, very low energy level where they'll be completely relaxed, lie on the floor with a blanket, and I'd read a visualisation to them where they're just able to just have a couple of minutes of just nothing, more or less, just peace, and allow them just to be. So we start off with moving our bodies really, really in a fun way. Each session would have a theme depending on the child's age. We can work with children up to sort of from 2 years all the way up to adulthood. So you'd start off with movement. Then we'd move on to games to increase it's just fun, imaginative games that they just have fun with. Then the next step we'd move on to is stretching. So you might use some yoga stretches to release tension, because through the day that's all built up in their bodies.
Now, I know my 5-year-old has experienced yoga with Relax Kids, and small world, we have worked out that it was actually with you.
Yeah.
So that's just brilliant.
It was a lot of fun.
And he loved it, and he came home and talked about it.
Yeah.
So it really does work, and the kids do love it.
Yeah, it's with...
Sorry to interrupt you. There's a couple of things that I'd like to pick up on from some of the things, not in a negative way, but I'd like to bring Rob in on this, because what you've just said is you've taken some people from high level, and these are young people, and you've brought them down, and then you've gone through a visualization. Rob, how does that manifest in the work that you do with the adult end of the population in terms of guided meditation?
Well, I think guided meditation's a wonderful thing to do. I also do visualization with individuals through hypnosis, hypnotherapy, which I think is a magnificent tool for that, because I think the imagination is so powerful, so strong, and we develop it, obviously at a very early age, and children are encouraged to use their imaginations all the time, or far more frequently than in adulthood. And I think one of the things that's missing from a lot of adults' lives is the use of imagination, and that element of play also goes out of adult life. And I think that does contribute to a degree of mental health illness. So I certainly encourage that in my work, and it's proven to be a wonderful tool for the subconscious, because the subconscious doesn't know the difference between a real event and imagination. So you can create with your mind.
What I was just going to add here was, both adults and young people, we're living such a busy, fast-paced life that we're having to engage in things like Relax Kids, which sounds absolutely wonderful. It's a shame we couldn't do a little bit of it this evening. We could all,
we could all chill down.
I think we could all do with lying down with the blanket on the floor. At the end of this day. But that's the point, isn't it? We're now having to add things into our children's lives, and indeed our own lives, to enable us to wind down, to just de-stress, and actually just have those moments of stillness and unrushedness, rather than addressing the busy, fast-paced life that we're living, that we're not actually wired up to actually carry on and live. It's not conducive to our health to do this for long periods of time.
I get that, and Ollie, I'd like to bring you in on this, if I may. I understand. Listen to me, I'm going to sound very old, and I apologise. But in the olden days, when I was growing up, we went out and we played, and we ran around, and we climbed trees, etc., etc. And I don't necessarily remember having the same stresses as where I think our year 6s are, our year 7s are, and people like that. Ollie, are people still out there doing a lot of sports, playing young ages? Are they getting rid of that energy or using that energy that way now? Or are we seeing, and I hate to say this, the social media thing where people are coming in? I know. Go on.
Well, I would say not much compared to the early days. I'm not saying I'm old, but given that we are more sedentary than ever, we have access to information at the click of a finger, through a phone, just pretty much instantaneously. We've become really, really sedentary as a society. And as a result, I mean, our youngers, the kids, are less and less active. They're getting more glued to the social media thing, which I believe is a generational thing. Because if you look back in your days, Jeff.
All right, thank you.
Everybody was probably reading newspapers and stuff. So there was still a connection to something. We still need to find a way to stay active no matter what our...
What I would add there is,
Yeah.
yes, our young people are living different lives than we led. And one of those reasons is that years and years ago, traditionally, women stayed at home, whether you like this description or not, it's the truth.
Yeah.
And they cared for children. And if mothers did go out to work as well as fathers, then there was a community of support. There was grandparents, there was people in the community that cared for children. And yeah, I went out on my bike in the morning all day long, came home when the lamppost.
That's right.
Yeah.
50 pence in your sock.
But that's
and
it.
that's all you needed.
But our young people aren't living like that now because our culture, our society is all geared up. We live to work. And so our young children aren't having that opportunity. I've got a 14-year-old daughter who has never played out in the streets. She's never played hide and seek across
Sure.
the whole neighbourhood in
Sure.
the way that we have.
Yeah.
And she never developed and has never developed those, skills of resilience in the way that we learned it when we fell out of trees, when we did things that...
And that's why we are seeing the 48% increase in young people now that are going to school with, quote, a diagnosis of a mental health illness.
I see children as young as 4 with issues of anxiety at the school gate that are, not able to separate from mum, or there's tears and, shaking because they're suffering with anxiety. And I hear what we're saying sort of about that children are not active and exercising, but I see that in a different way because children are active because they're
I think they're active. I don't think that they're not.
Yeah,
But
I've got a
it's in
3-year-old. He's very
it's
active.
in a very in a very different way, I think. 'cause
Agreed. So it's much
very
more structured.
competitive and structured, and
Mm.
that has its own stresses because they might go swimming, but it's about how fast can you swim, how many lengths can you do, can you beat the other child? It's not.
So
as a fun-
why are we surprised then now that we are seeing the majority of GP referrals and the majority of GP visits on mental health, anxiety, depression, and things like that? Why are we surprised if Menaka is seeing kids
Can I just
that are
mention
foreign?
about education generally? I mean, I used to work in education for many years, and what Menaka is saying about what they do with young people, young children, I think why can't that be applied across the board, right through education? I think our education system's sadly lacking in this kind of thing, developing the whole person. It's become very test orientated, very left brain orientated. The right brain has been closed down by just the enforced curriculum that kids are following, and they're finding it irrelevant to their lives. So I think even if it was to adopt some of what Menaka is saying into that curriculum, you'd see a massive change in children.
Agreed.
We do. I'm pleased to say I think depending on the schools, and it is coming more into the curriculum because Ofsted are now going to start be measuring on what schools are doing for children's mental well-being. So some schools in Solihull, love it, and they'll welcome relaxed kids and yoga into school. But then you have other schools where it's not prioritised. It depends a lot on the school. But it's about exactly that, making sure in the same way that we do PE, the same way we have lessons about healthy eating, because we look at our physical bodies all the time, and children do PE twice a week, and that's part of the routine. But not every school will spend an hour of the week saying, actually, let's learn about how we can regulate our breathing. Let's learn about, when you get that nervous feeling in your tummy, what does that feel like? How do we recognise that? What can we do to prevent it? They're just basic life skills that we all need to have from a very, very young age.
In the same way that we're taught about our physical health, we should be taught about our mental health. And children are now taught about, their brains and how their brains can work. We're teaching children to become emotionally intelligent, to have that emotional literacy, to be able to name, label, manage their feelings and behaviours. And yet, as adults, all of us sitting around this table, can we do all of those things? No, we can't, if we're quite honest.
I've got to say, I've learnt so much research for my 5-year-old from what he's actually learning at the school he's at with regards to his emotions and his smiley faces and how do you feel today. That is actually encouraged at the school that he's at. But the yoga, I know, was a hit from Relax Kids. There's other things that they do as well. But what other than the yoga and the stretching and the breathing, what are the other key tools that you think that our listeners can take away today for children?
Breathing is a huge is so important. I can't stress how effective that is when a child's having, whether it's a meltdown, whether it's a moment of sadness, nervousness, all of that. If we just stop and say, let's take some really calming breaths, and you breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth, and we'll do that 10 times. And you can make it fun. You can have that, you can do lion breath. So when we, at your son's school, we had a jungle theme. So we'd do a lion breath where we'd breathe in through our nose, but when we breathe out, it'd be like, a big roar.
I've seen
and they think it's hilarious. But, they're learning to regulate through those simple things, or using feathers, because it's quite visual. So when they breathe out, they're looking at the feather fluttering. So it's just using fun tools. So breathing is a really, really important one. Another one is touch, because we talk about the amygdala, the part of the brain that reacts when we're under stress. And that responds well to touch. So we'll teach them about pressure points on their hands, drawing patterns. And it's also a distraction technique to take away from the anxiety that they're feeling. Because I'll often say to the children, when you're upset, mummy might come and give you a cuddle, and you don't realise that actually it's because she's stroking your arm, that it's helping you to just calm and start to feel a bit better. So it's teaching them to do that on themselves. So we'll use self-massage or peer massage using story massage. So we'll have a really fun story about how it's raining in the jungle, and we'll tap on the heads and go down the shoulders. And they really enjoy that. And another key thing is using positive affirmations. So we call them kind words. Where we'll encourage the children to say, I am strong, I am brave, I am kind. And the more they say that, they start to believe it, and once they believe it, they behave in that way.
And so actually, affirmations has been an amazing tool for me in my journey as well. And I know, Kate, you're a big advocate of affirmations as well.
Question for Rob. With a positive affirmation, I've also seen people tap on the side of their palms and on the top of their eyebrows and things like that. Where does that technique come from?
That's an emotional freedom technique.
And how then does that take the positive affirmation and the tapping on these particular things? Is that a touch thing?
Well,
like
I
Manaka
don't
was
practice that myself, but I know a little bit about it. I mean, what you're doing is you're tapping into the meridians, and you're reinforcing that those pressure points, those key pressure points, and it gets into the whole psyche, the whole person, if you like, and by that repetition, and it kind of taps the issues away with that affirmation, and it can work remarkably well for a lot of people.
For a lot of people. Right, let's move this across to Kate, and then we'll have another one of our tracks from our positive playlist. Kate, you work in an environment where you go into companies and corporations and things like that, and you work on mental health first aid.
Yeah.
So now you're coming in, rather than us doing CPR in the olden days where we all sat round and learnt how to do that, you're coming in and you're taking a different technique and giving, that sort of mental health approach. Yeah. So tell us how that works in big companies and large organisations.
Yep, so I'm a mental health first aid England instructor, and so I deliver all of the adult and the youth courses. And so mental health first aid is ultimately about the part we can all play in understanding our own mental health and looking out for the mental health of other people. When we talk about mental health, if I maybe asked you to tell me your understanding of mental health, one word that pops into your mind when I say it to you. Now, we're all maybe got a lot of experience, around mental health. But when I go out and train people and speak to people, the common misconception is that we find that people believe mental health and mental illness are one and the same word. And so we don't talk about our mental health enough because we've been led to believe that it means mental illness. And so we don't talk about it enough, but every single one of us has got mental health. Yeah. And it's learning to understand how we take care of that mental health. In the same way we learn to take care of our physical health, our mental health is fluid, and it will change over time depending on, you know, what circumstances we've got going on, you know, within our lives. And so being able to look out for the signs and symptoms of my kind of maybe mental ill health or when mental health issues arise are really important. So Mental Health First Aid England talk us through an action plan, which is kind of similar to what you were talking about CPR. And if anyone's done first aid training, they might remember it as Dr. ABC or whatever that acronym might be. In Mental Health First Aid England, we have an action plan called, it's very glamorous, called Algae. And I know now, depending on where you're from in the borough, you can call it algae if you like, but but we talk about it being algae, and ultimately that A is how we approach, assess and assist a situation and a person who might be in a crisis situation. So it gives us the tools and confidence to be able to support somebody. And the L is listen and communicate non-judgmentally, and how we talk about it is, you know, this listen is the most important part. Quite often when we're communicating with people, we're communicating with them to reply rather than listening and holding that space. And ultimately, if we can just have that empathy for someone, you know, hold that space for them, really listen to what is going on for a person, and encourage somebody to open up, then it's that whole, you know, a problem shared is a problem halved. And that naturally leads into give support and information, encourage other, you know, encourage professional help and support, and encourage other supports within the community. And that's part of like the whole algae process. So we teach this for adults to become like highly skilled mental health first aiders. So we look at lots of we look at mental illness in depth. So we talk through suicidal crisis, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, psychosis, self-harm, eating disorders, and you know, I believe quite strongly that every single person should experience this training in some way, shape or form, because it's the part we can all play for ourselves, for our friends, family, loved ones. And it's actually, you know, going through, there's a campaign called Where's Your Head At? And it's been through Parliament, and, you know, in the future, the hope is and the belief is that we will have to have mental health first aid training in the way that we have to have physical first aid training, so we can take care of one another.
It's great stuff. Thanks for bringing that out to the fore. It is, of course, World Mental Health Day. You are listening to Solihull Radio. We've got our positive playlist. It is 27 minutes past 7 o'clock. And if you want to be involved, why don't you get in touch with us? If you want to send a text and let us know your stories, text the word studio and then your message to 82228. You can send us an email, studio@solihullradio.com. Or, of course, if you've got the confidence and you want to share your story, why don't you share it with us on 0121 704 4253. Is that okay, Ali?
That's brilliant.
Thanks.
So,
bit of music?
let's have some music. Let's go back to our positive playlist.
Yep.
And this is actually a song that I think all children will love, but I love as well. And it is Monica's choice, and it's Happy by Pharrell Williams.
There you go. See you. See you back.
Crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along
solihullradio.com.
And that was Happy, Pharrell Williams. So, great discussion so far, guys. Really enjoying this. We're now going to get on to the conversation of daily self-care, and that's actually looking after ourselves. Because how are we expected to look after our children as parents and teachers and carers if we're not actually looking after ourselves? And that is every single day, finding me time in our everyday. Now, there are so many ideas and so many things that people will suggest for self-care, from going to a spa, having a hot shower, going to bed early. But one of the power tools, I think, when it comes to daily self-care is exercise. And I'm sure that you are going to completely agree with me.
Absolutely.
On that.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. I mean, it's hugely. I mean, maybe because it's my job and my passion. I strongly believe in fitness and being active for anybody. As human beings and as young as I can remember, we were born active. I mean, the minute I came out, I was screaming all over the place.
Around,
just moving around. And I think that as we grow older, we kind of like escape from that a little bit. And being active it's not just about just going to the gym and picking up weight or whatever it is. Being active could be literally anything. Could be walking for 10 minutes. Could be a bit of stretching in the morning, 5 minutes. It could be anything, but just be active. Just be active. Just get moving. As human beings, we are created, I believe we are created to move and not be sedentary. I mean, if we look back at our ancestors, they used to walk miles and miles and then just go to places. And then by doing so, they could live longer, by the way, which is a great thing. When we want to link that up with mental health, I always say that fitness is just the start of the self-awareness journey. Yeah. We're probably going to look at ourselves in the mirror and be like, okay, I don't like what I see in the mirror, but there is a deeper message. Mm-hmm. It's just that message of, I probably don't like myself right now, mentally as well. Yeah. So being self-aware of this is literally opening the gates to self-improvement, which could take so many forms. And I mean, we've got so many experts here today. It could be anything. Just be active and be proactive rather than reactive when it comes to mental health. It's about being aware of, okay, right now I'm not feeling okay and I should do something about it.
And I can directly relate to that. And actually, I was going to say, Kate, you do mental health mates, which is walking and talking, really, isn't it?
I was just going to add to that. Quite a lot of times, due to the kind of, I think, the diet industry and fitness and all of that, people don't exercise because they love their bodies. But actually, I exercise because I love my body, not because I hate my body. Yeah. And it's a different mindset, isn't it? And sometimes we set ourselves up to fail.
Absolutely.
And we know that exercise can have a bigger impact on our mental health for some people than medication can. And so, when we're thinking about kind of recovery and, having positive mental health, exercise kind of goes hand in hand with that. And like you said, Ali, I organise Mental Health Mates Solihull. I've talked about this before, actually, on Solihull Radio. They're organised by a journalist called Bryony Gordon, and they actually run all over the world now. And she's the journalist who interviewed Prince Harry when he came out and shared his experiences with mental health issues. And the idea is that no one has to feel alone. We can all feel part of a we. And so the plan is that we meet once a month, the first Sunday of each month in Bruton Park. And we encourage anyone to come along and we just walk around the park. That's and brilliant. Quite often we walk all the way around the park. We haven't realised we've done it. We've exercised. Yeah. It's been really good for our mental health, but also those connections, those friendships. We have a cup of tea afterwards, and we've been going for nearly 2 years now. We don't always make it every single month, being truthful. Sometimes that just doesn't happen, and sometimes we can have a group of 2 or 3. Sometimes we can have a group of 15, but ultimately it's just that, you know, if you've ever experienced a mental health issue and my role as a mental health first aider in the work that I do, I talked about my lived experiences of depression. You know, there are times where I felt so lonely that no one knew how I was feeling, I had nowhere to turn, no one to go to, and to just be able to connect with someone that knows how that feels, and to know that somebody out there you know, is really, you know, such a comfort.
And I believe that in Solihull there's also Parkrun. It's not something that is that what it's called?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Parkrun.
Parkrun on
it's not something I
Saturday
do.
mornings.
Yeah, I've got quite a few friends, and I know a few people that do it, and they love the fact that they're just going out and they're running with like-minded people, and it just does them the world of good.
Well, have you heard of Red January? I've done it for the last 2 years. It's run, it's kind of... I think it's supported by Mind, and it's called Run Every Day in January, with the thought being that January can be a difficult month for lots of people for lots of different reasons. The weather's bleak, no one's typically got any money, you know, it can be, you know, difficult for lots of people. And actually moving, it doesn't have to run, but just moving, whether it's a walk around the block like you were saying, Ollie, just stretching your legs, it makes a massive difference. And over the course of the month you really notice how you're feeling. And it's coming into, I think it's been going for a number of years, and it's really developed a red community, and that's, you know, really powerful for people to take part in.
So fitness, sorry to interrupt you. So fitness is one of the options that we're looking at, Ollie, and I absolutely agree with you. And I'd like to mention something that Manaka said earlier, just in passing, I almost thought as well. Diets.
Yeah.
Diets have changed, haven't they? We don't seem to all sit round the table at the same times. We don't have those periods where we can have that relaxed time. So let's move that from fitness into diets. And from there, Rob, where does the alternative sort of side of things come to? Because you're an alternative therapies practitioner, and you've obviously... either been down the line of, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but you've been down the line of conventional therapies, and you've thought to yourself, well, hold on, there's science, and then there's weight in these things as well. So I'm going to put my 2 pence there. So tell me a little bit more about the self-help that holistic therapies or other types of therapies can give.
Well, there are numerous benefits of holistic treatments. They're not necessarily designed just to heal, if you like, for want of a better expression. Sometimes people wait until they feel ill before seeking help. But I always say to people, well, you can have treatments at any time, not because you feel ill, but because you want to stay well. It is also a prevention. Someone who has good practice of natural health, the regular natural health treatments, things like that. It doesn't have to be every week, but a regular occurrence in their life, they will get ill less, because the treatments such as reflexology, Reiki, Indian head massage, things like that, they help balance the body, balance the energy of the body. They work holistically, which basically means that there's the mind, body and spirit all are benefiting from that. And the more you practice that, the better that balance gets. And you will also find that there's elements of diet will come into it as well. You know, something that I do as my part of my practice, we have a regular ongoing dialogue, and we'll talk about these kind of things. What can people do to improve their life, their lifestyles? And when you start to change lifestyles as well as having a regular practice, you see an enormous difference in people, because we're taking on board a toxic environment in so many ways, and it's actually starting to become aware of that. The foods we eat, the things like mobile phones. People are living with their mobile phones constantly on and constantly, you know, even by the bed at night, which is something I encourage people not to do. To switch off the Wi-Fi.
Guilty.
Yeah,
We've all put our hands up.
Putting our hands up.
And people, I don't think generally are aware of the negative consequences that things like that can have.
Yeah.
So having a dialogue with someone that can help in that respect certainly benefits, and having those regular treatments starts to move the people forward. And if there are imbalances in the body, any negatives, you'll soon find them out with these treatments like reflexology and Reiki. And they will, I'm not saying you can cure anything, but you can certainly start to move things out of the body.
Reflexology and Reiki are hundreds, thousands of years old, aren't they? Those particular treatments. So they obviously predate medication and, you know, some of the treatment levels of here. How then have we fallen into going to see the GP first?
Well, people like to go to people that they think that they can trust, and we've had a tradition of trusting our doctors and GPs in this country, and well, almost every country really. They are the go-to experts on health, but in my opinion, I don't know whether that's necessarily the case.
Always the case, yeah.
I mean, they have their expertise, but are they necessarily the best experts on health? And if you talk to them about prevention of illness, there's sometimes a bit of a gap there in their knowledge, because they're not actually trained in prevention of illness. They are, for want of a better term, managers of illness.
Kate, do you see a lot of people in the health practitioners coming and seeing some of your mental health things, or do you ever go to these courses where there's GPs in the room learning how to deliver some of these things?
Well, I haven't yet delivered mental health first aid to any GPs, but one of the things that you've been talking about, preventative measures, we talk about mental health first aid being a preventative measure rather than a reactive measure.
Yeah.
When often people are in a crisis situation, when they're kind of reach burnout, when they're at the kind of the lowest point, and that's when we seek help or support from people rather than looking at things that are preventative measures that take care of us. And I can't remember what the other part of the question was.
Oh, no, not to worry. It's just that I'd like to see more medical practitioners, GPs, specialist nurses and things like that.
I suppose what I would add there then is, and this is what we talk about a lot, is that GP stands for general practitioner. For some reason, we feel like a GP has all of the answers to all of our problems and has a magic solution. And we know that GPs are overstretched, overworked, and trying their very best to support lots of people. But when it comes to mental health issues, they're not often mental health trained,
Sure.
and they haven't got that specialist knowledge. So I always advocate people to ask at their GP surgery which GP within that surgery has got the most amount of experience and knowledge when it comes to mental health issues.
I think as well, when we go to a GP, that it's more they're treating the symptoms rather than the cause, whereas what we're talking about here is sort of things that we can do every day.
Yeah.
To address the cause, and for a lot of us that's about our lifestyles that we lead now and the pressures that we're under. So in terms of the work that I do, that's why I think it's so important from a very young age that children are taught those basic skills that they can utilise in so many different ways. Because I always think, so if someone had taught me just simple things like breathing before I went into an interview when my tummy's turning and I'm feeling like I'm going to be sick, I'd be able to do that, and it would have regulated all of that. So it's trying to be preventative, but also treat the cause in a natural way rather than let's go and get a tablet.
Well, I completely agree with that. Yeah. And one thing I would say about GPs, in my experience, is that they look to the prescription book as the first port of call for a solution. And I've worked with a number of clients who tell me the background of their issues, which may be anxiety, depression, all sorts of things. And usually, if they've been to see a GP, they've referred them to the pharmacist without exploring any other options first. And this is my issue, because I've worked with people who I know that I can help in a relatively short space of time, and I have done that. I've worked with people who've come with severe anxiety, depression, who've been prescribed antidepressants. And on one occasion, there's just this one quick example, this young lady, she's only about 21, was given a dose of strong antidepressants because she was having issues of anxiety at work. Her mother had come to me before for treatments and referred her to me. So before she'd had the antidepressants, she came to see me. We had a course of 4 hypnotherapy stress management sessions, and 4 sessions later, she was a different person. And I'm not just bigging myself up on that. That is just by looking at the situation, having the right kind of approach and reframing it in their own mind so that they can see what the issues were, look at it in a different way. When you're working with someone else who can help you guide through that process, then you can come to a different outcome. And a month later, she got an Employee of the Month award in the same job. She was about to quit. But had she gone down that route of antidepressants, that would have been a very different story.
I take your point.
And I think that's a really strong message around some of our alternative therapies as well. As a Reiki therapist myself, there is a lot of stigma, I would say, attached to some of the alternative therapies. They're a bit hippie, or they're a bit weird, they're a bit out there, they're religious or they're not religious. I've had it all. How do you challenge that to then encourage people to try them? Because I think some people are put off because of what people might think if they have that treatment, if that makes sense.
I'm finding that a lot less these days, I must admit. When I first started out over 11 years ago now, that was happening a lot because there was a lot of ignorance around natural therapies. But I think things are changing, and there's a lot better publicity around now. There's even some GPs will refer to reflexologists and hypnotherapists. It's rare still, but it's increasing.
I've even recently seen NHS advertise a job for a Reiki therapist, which threw me, but I was very happy about it. Because
that's really good.
The right message is getting
Well, things
through.
like Reiki are probably one of those that has a little bit more of that kind of, wishy-washy tag about it, because it's a little less tangible in some people's eyes. And I completely understand that. And I'll never force anybody down any route that they're not comfortable to go in. But there's many alternatives. I mean, like reflexology is recognised by so many professional organisations now, and health insurance companies will now insure people to have reflexology treatments, and things like acupuncture, the same. Different types of massage, also highly beneficial. But it is changing. And I'm finding, I've spoken to people of all different age groups, and I'm now finding that even people in the higher age group, know more about holistic treatments now than they did 10 years ago, a lot more. And you don't have to explain in detail exactly what reflexology is to everybody now.
I absolutely love reflexology, and I'm normally asleep within about 3 minutes.
Relaxing.
It's very relaxing.
Okay, so you are listening to our World Mental Health Day sort of roundtable discussion about the different types of therapies, the different techniques, hints and tips of what's been happening. We've got some amazing people here in the studio, all with a slightly different perspective of how to keep your mental health on its zenith, really, just to try and keep everything balanced. We've got from the young right through to the older generations, from the fitness to the CBT to the NLP, to all of the different types of talking therapies that we can have. We've also even just touched, if you've just joined us, on the medicated therapies, be it anti-anxiety or antidepressant. So if these are the tools that you are using day to day, why don't you either get in touch or have a look at solihullradio.com, and we'll give you some links to go and see some practitioners, some different opportunities which may help you rebalance your mental health. And like Kate said earlier, mental illness and your mental health are two different things. Okay, so you need to understand. We've got about 9 minutes until 8 o'clock this evening. And we are just going to be chatting around the last few things. We've got some music coming up, and hopefully you're going to tell me who has picked the next track.
Okay, so this is actually from Rob. I think it fits very nicely in what we've just discussed around daily self-care, exercise. It's Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves.
I better press play then.
Sorry.
You're listening to Solihull Radio.
That's right, you are listening to Solihull Radio. Thank you very much for joining us here. Now, of course, what we've not spoken about up until now is the views of young people and how it actually works out for them, because, you know, the rest of our round table this evening, and I'm not saying this out of turn, am I, ladies and gents? We are of the generation that is not currently going through the education system. Oh, I said that nicely, didn't I? That was a nice way of putting it. Now, we have someone in the studio that is currently going through the education system. Her name is Kate, and I'm basically going to leave it to Ali to have a quick chat with Kate and see what's going on in terms of, you know, her approach to mental health and what's happening in the schools and colleges around here. I'll leave it to you guys.
So, Kate, I was 17 when I started having anxiety attacks, panic attacks. Didn't know what they were, and I didn't talk about them. And that's the biggest mistake that I actually made for my own mental health and for my well-being. And I didn't talk about it really, truthfully, until I was 26. And that's actually when I hit my rock bottom and was really poorly, and then had to go on this quite painful journey to come back to, you know, a better health. So, as a 17-year-old, what are your experiences for you and your friends in society today? And how can we encourage 17-year-olds to talk a lot sooner than what I did?
Well, thank you for having me on the show tonight. I must say, unfortunately, I've known quite a lot of friends to have seriously struggled with mental health issues. I've known people who have tried to commit suicide. Unfortunately, I know people who have committed suicide. I think one thing that a lot of my friends actually talk about a lot at college is the lack of support we get through the NHS and other systems such as that. Now, I know that the NHS are pressed right now. It's not necessarily their fault, but there is a lack of discussion when it comes to mental health, definitely. We did mention this beforehand as well. The education system is, right now, in my opinion anyway, very, very focused on grades, which, of course, grades are important. But at what point do we forget to actually pay attention to ourselves as human beings? And that discussion is really missing from the curriculum, I think. So I think a lot of young people are left to struggle by themselves. Personally, I run a music show here at Solihull, so music is my thing. And a lot of my friends find comfort in that. Particularly nowadays, there's a bit of an indie movement. People are coming together again. And that's a community for people struggling. But really, that underground community needs to be taken to the forefront and back into society. And adults and young people need to work together to make it easier for everybody, not just young people.
I think that is just such a powerful message. And I'm so grateful that you have just stepped in and said that. And I think if anyone is listening that can make a difference with that, then they need to.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thanks, Kate. So, going back around the table then, is there any other tools that anybody would like to share before we finish this evening? Any of your power tools that you want our listeners to walk away with this evening?
Well, I would just add to what Kate was just saying. You know, we hear about, you know, our young people being kind of in a crisis situation. We know that kind of services are really stretched. But one of the biggest things we can do for our young people and for ourselves is to treat each other with respect, and to actually, you know, we talked about, you know, how important it is to listen, but to really explore what's going on for a person rather than kind of, sometimes it's all about, you know, being judgmental, or our young people have it so easy, or, you know, they're living in this world that we never had. Well, actually, with that new world comes lots of new challenges, comes lots of different things. One of the biggest things we can do is respect one another, have that empathy for someone, and just, you know, support someone.
Be kind.
Be kind. I think that's the biggest message from children to adults, is about being kind and showing sort of understanding towards each other.
I was actually asked recently when I was doing a talk, how can you be kind to somebody that hasn't been kind to you? And it sounds very cliched. I've seen a quote for it, but they're the people that need it most.
And that's what I was about to say. That's exactly how I talk about it, especially, you know, with the young people. Young children will ask for our love, and demand it in the most unloving and uncaring of ways, and they're the children that need it most. And actually, if you also think about those adults around you, it is exactly the same thing. And sometimes people are struggling and we don't know what's going on beneath the surface. And just taking that moment to just respond with kindness is a powerful thing.
That's right. easy to say, isn't it? It used to be walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, didn't it? Now I think if we can walk 200 yards in somebody else's shoes, I think we'll understand a little bit what's going on a lot quicker. The time has beaten us, everybody. We're a little bit over our scheduled time today, but I don't think that's too much of a problem. Can I say a really big thank you to our panel for coming in and giving up their time on our discussion this evening. So we've got Olivier Keeley, we've got Menarca. You see, I've got this block now that's happened. Menarca De Silva, we've got Alison Swift, we've got Kate Moxley, and of course we've got Rob Buckle on our panel. Now, have a look at their respective web pages, their respective socials, if you would like any further information about the things that we've been speaking about. Just before we go, this is Alison's first ever radio show. How do you think she's done?
She's done amazing.
Fantastic.
She's natural.
Yeah, I think you
She's
did
a
really
pro.
well.
Seriously, the tools have been flying
Yeah,
throughout
I was gonna
the
say.
day, throughout the whole show.
You've been
They clearly
really,
work.
really,
Yeah.
I
really
wouldn't have guessed
good.
it was your first show.
Really,
Thank you.
really good.
Thank
We're going to finish on a little piece of music. If you've enjoyed what you've been listening to here on Solihull Radio, just subscribe and bookmark us. Ask your Alexa or your Google assistant to play Solihull Radio on TuneIn, and of course you can get that through into your cars as well if you ever want to listen to the live output. This show is also available on demand via our podcast service, via Podbean, Stitcher, iTunes and Spotify. So if you would like to be part of the next mental health chat, hashtag Team Talk here at Solihull Radio, why don't you get in touch with us now? Alison, what song?
And can I just say thank you very much for this opportunity.
No
I think
problem.
it's been a great show, and we're going to finish now on the final song, Count on Me by Bruno Mars.
I'll press play then for you.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you soon, and thanks for listening in.
If you ever find yourself stuck in the middle of the sea, I'll sail the world to find you. If you ever find yourself lost in the dark and you can't see, I'll be the light to guide you. Find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. If you're tossing and you're turning and you just can't fall asleep, I'll sing a song beside you. And if you ever forget how much you really mean to me, every day I will remind you. Oh, find out what we're made of when we are called to help our friends in need. You can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. 'Cause that's what friends are supposed to do, oh yeah. Ooh, yeah, yeah. You'll always have my shoulder when you cry. I'll never let go, never say goodbye. You know you can count on me like 1, 2, 3, I'll be there. And I know when I need it, I can count on you like 4, 3, 2, and you'll be there. what friends are supposed to do. Oh yeah. Ooh, you can count on me 'cause I can count on you.
Solihullradio.com